Headphones a little bit. Okay. Our question, I'm representing Group 1, was what is Initiative I-873? Anybody wants to verify the question? And just make it up. And what we decided as a group from the information that we've been told, in essence, what the initiative is we're trying to change the laws on the books, Washington state laws for police officers when there's crime, people are getting murdered, things that we've seen in the news. And the way the law is written now is there's a language in there about malice intent. So as we've seen officers, we want them to get prosecuted, there's pretty much a loophole in the law where malice intent is a state of mind and it's more of hearsay, and so you can't factually prosecute a police officer against based on malice intent. So we're trying to get that out of the language of the laws so we can prosecute them based on facts, evidence, videos that we can see, and so things can be on a more equal playing field and more just, and the police officer can be held better accountable for their actions.
All right. All right, group 2.
Just one quick question. Did anybody remember that being on the ballot last year in 2015? And if so, did you vote on it? Okay. Group 2.
Okay, so
On the 215? That wasn't on there? Is it on the 16?
They're trying to get on the 16. It's the petition one.
Well, the malice piece of it, yes. But the video, the body cameras in and of itself? Yeah, that one was. The malice piece is in conversation. Yeah, so thanks for the clarification because I knew that. You ain't going to try to.
Go ahead, Brandon.
thank you, Sean, for the explanation. Okay. Our question was describe one issue concerning the LGBTQ community. So we thought the bathrooms. Another part would be the safety in the bathrooms and how people are, let's say, a man who was born as a man but wants to be accepted as a woman goes into the women's bathroom, and there's little girls in there, trying to go to the bathroom, and he's, whatever. Yeah. You get my drift. Yeah.
That's good. We don't have to go through all of them because, of course, there's going to be a lot. But, yes, the whole issue of the bathroom is a predominant one that is facing, everybody, but it's specifically targeting the transgender portion of the, no, you can stand up, LGBTQ community. Thank you.
All right, so we're group 3, and our question is, who is the mayor of Seattle, and how has his office been addressing homelessness in Seattle? So the mayor is Ed Murray, and from what I understand, he's the first openly gay mayor in Seattle, if that's correct. And some of the things that he's been doing, so as you guys may know, homelessness is a huge problem in the Seattle area, especially along I-5. So restructuring some of the shelters, increasing the hours. Many homeless shelters kick the residents out during the daytime, so they were left to kind of drift along the streets. So helping out with those hours. And from what we understood, making new rules with the police so they're not harassing homeless people as much on the streets, and kind of restructuring some laws around that. It's kind of what we came up with.
Good,
so.
Thanks. All right, next.
I just want to add a quick tip on that one, because his position earlier was not what it is now, right? Has anyone heard of the Jungle by the I-5, right? So it's a community that are homeless by the I-5 corridor, and he came out boldly and said, we're going to shut it down. And he had to be reminded, or at least brought up to speed, that this is a complex issue. These are people, these are human beings, and it's a lot more complex. And where are they going to go? How are we going to provide for them? So now some of the initiatives are coming out that have a little bit more commonsensical and logical solutions. So who's 5?
Okay, for group 4, the question we have is, you're a Christian with a federal job. This job requires you to perform duties that contradict your Christian beliefs. Should you be legally obligated to perform your job in spite of your beliefs? Well, that question has, depending on what kind of job it is, if you're working in Congress or in the House, for those kind of votes, you can abstain yourself. But if it's a full-time job, like with Social Security or the likes, or you're working with the courts, like example of the lady in Tennessee or Kentucky, I think that they want to write, they want to give marriage licenses, by law she's obligated to, because that was the job she accepted. Her job is not based on what she believes. So if she can't do it, she has to leave that job to do something else and not stand in between other people and getting their licenses, because by law she's obligated to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kat.
Good job, Deacon. Next group.
So group 5, our question was, to combat police brutality in the black community, what policies and measures should be put in place? So we had a few things for there. One was amending the requirements to be a police officer, such as having to come from the community that you're policing. Better training overall, and that probably requires more budgets for training as well. Real consequences for any police brutality actions. One idea is to say that, as an example, for lawsuits that are being paid out for police brutality, if those were to come out of the police pension fund, then you might see people policing themselves as well. Because right now there's no accountability. And the fourth one is, again, better accountability, like the act that they're talking about outside.
Thank you. Next.
He was ready. Here you go, Jesse.
We're group 6, and our question is, what is Brexit? Brexit. Brexit. For clarification, this is the question. Okay. All right. So Brexit is Britain's exit from the European Union. Their economy is no longer paying into or receive support from the European Union, and they're now saying that they have they may have their second female prime minister, and this is coming into question because now they're talking about security concerns. Their currency has plummeted, and now the American dollar is now stronger than the pound, which is like the first in the history. So there's a lot of concern about the economics from a worldwide perspective of how things are changing now. So that's our topic.
Thank you, sir. Next group.
7.
Okay. Describe one recent Supreme Court ruling. And the recent Supreme Court ruling that our group came up with was the fact that the Supreme Court threw out Obama's initiative for gun regulations. This is really important because with the gun violence that's going on in our country, that there is no gun control. If we had gun control, maybe we would have less killings of our own people, and there would be less killings that the police would be doing, because you wouldn't have young men that would be walking around with guns, and that way they wouldn't have a reason to say that they are threatened because we have a weapon. There was a time that I can remember when the gangs were very prominent and there was a lot of violence going on, and it was illegal to have a 9mm weapon if you were not a police officer. Not saying that they're better than we are, but it did help. We did see a decrease in the violence and the killings of African Americans and other races in our country.
Thanks for bringing that one up. And our last group.
Before we jump, so because I don't want to skip over these, Brexit, just for those who don't know or aren't aware, the European Union were 28 countries in Europe that came together, and they had a political infrastructure, they had a common currency, and they had laws, and they had they were organized, kind of like the states of America are organized, right? So this is a big move for that country to it's like when we left, way back, celebrate that Independence Day. Here, the few other things that the Supreme Court did recently, one was they also rejected the immigration plan that Obama put forth, which makes it very difficult for folks to come out of the shadow and gain benefits. And as you know, many of them are contributing heavily to our economy. So that's one. The other one was the search and seizure. So now if you have a warrant, even if it's a traffic violation, a cop can pull you over, run that, and then now search. And that's one of the things that they ruled in favor of. Pastor, that's right. You
Group 8.
Right. Okay. Don't go too far. Oh, I'm right here.
We're Group 8, and we had, who is Randy Doran, and what bold statement did he make regarding public schools in Washington State? So what we came up with is we would like to use a lifeline. We would like to either phone a friend or poll the audience because we have no idea who Randy Dorn is or what statement he apparently made last week.
We aren't giving, fine, we'll give you a lifeline.
Thank you.
As we transition out of this activity. Randy Dorn is the current superintendent of public instruction. His term is officially going to be up. And pretty much, if anybody has children in public schools, you work in it, or you're just interested in education, Washington is underfunding our public schools, and there has been, we've been found unconstitutional for that, and measures are supposed to be put in place. Actually, the legislator is fined a significant amount of money every day that they don't comply. And basically, he said, shut the schools down until the legislator decides to get their stuff together and adequately fund the schools of our state, close them. Well, that's a problem if you have a first grader who needs to like learn how to read. So a lot of people were shocked that pretty much the lead educator of the state would say, close these schools down until Olympia gets their stuff together. And so there's your lifeline. I'm actually really pleased with the responses that we got from you guys. This wasn't to make anybody feel stupid or anything, but I think our point for the activity will kind of be made as we go along. Moving into the first slide. So this is facing the issues, and basically we're not here to make anybody feel like we are the political gurus, we know more than you, we're here to teach you like this is what you have to do, blah, blah, blah. No, this is a candid conversation, peer to peer, for us to have some real dialogue about as young adults, kind of the political environment and everything, and kind of what our place should be and what that might look like in different ways. So moving to my first slide, as Christians, everything that we do should, I'm gonna say should because everything that we do doesn't always have a foundation based in God. And so when it comes to politics, you know, everybody has a different understanding of where God fits in that. Some people are of the mindset of, you know, as long as I have Jesus, that's all I need. Well, you know, that doesn't really work when you have to pay taxes to the federal government. And so you have to be politically engaged and understand, because though we're not supposed to be of the world, we do live in it. And who wants to live in a hellhole until you get to Jesus? So starting out with this, to begin, I want to start with our foundation, which is establishing our understanding of God, how we're to live out our faith, and what that means in practical terms for the secular societies that we live in. Matthew 25, 35 through 36 and 40. I'll read it quickly. For I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you came to visit me. The king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did it for me. So basically this scripture really is our mandate from Christ to demonstrate our love and our commitment to God via the love and commitment that we give to the most vulnerable members of our society. And if anybody pays attention to the Bible, you'll notice that God is really adamant about making sure that we're paying attention to the least of these. Because if you're in a society that is unconcerned with people who need help, you're not worth much. You know, it's going to be very destructive, very unbalanced, and lead to chaos, which we can clearly see in our country with some of the ways that we've been running things. So very quickly, I only have a couple points I want to talk to you guys about. And the first is that there are two aspects of living out our faith. You can flip this slide. We're called to be both proactive as well as reactive through charity. Next slide. There we go. By proactive, I mean you do something before a trauma happens, right? So if I'm going to be proactive, meaning that I address elements that cause trauma for others, and I'm going to be reactive through charity, that means I'm providing healing after the trauma, right? So an example that I can think of is like the prison pipe, school to prison pipeline, right? So we all know that America has a big issue with locking a lot of people up. I mean, our numbers have literally tripled, quadrupled in the last couple of years. We're way farther than any other, super industrialized nation and everything. And so what makes me think of what I think about is that if we're going to be proactive in fighting this, because it's definitely a multifaceted issue, that means we have to address some traumas that lead to that pipeline, right? So if I want to make sure that we decrease our numbers from a proactive standpoint, then I should probably look at education. If you go to communities and little kids aren't getting the proper education that they need at 4, 5, 6, and 7, well, then you shouldn't be upset when they can't read when they're 13. And then you can't be upset when they're getting into crime because they don't have the education or the skill set to be properly employed. So I can't wait until they get to prison and they need to come back into society, and then I have to spend extra money to reintegrate them into society. I could probably start with pre-K. Now, if I'm going to address it reactively, which is always going to have to be there, then that means I need to address it through, measures that will provide healing after the trauma happens. So yeah, you went to jail or you got in trouble with the law, but now you need to be reintegrated into society. Well, I can't take somebody who's been in prison for the last 20 years and we've grown leaps and bounds and now they're in a reality they don't understand. So I need to have some education programs readily available for them so that they can get some skill sets so that they can provide for themselves and they're not in the jungle. I need to have some programs and some measures in place so that they're being hired and they're not discriminated against so that they don't go back into prison and now us as taxpayers have to pay all this money to have people caged up like animals. So when we look at our faith, one scripture I want to bring up is Amos 5:24, let justice roll on like a river, righteousness like a never-ending stream. And when you look at justice as your main theme here, you have to seek justice on the front end and not just be limited to charity. We have to make sure that our delivery systems are fair, access to quality education, jobs, housing, criminal justice systems need to be fair. There has to be equal protection and opportunity under the law. Because if you don't address these issues that shape people's experience in life, then you're not providing justice, which is part of the mandate that God gives us as his people. Let's see, Isaiah 1:17, learn to do right, seek justice, defend the oppressed, take up the causes of the fatherless, plead the case of the widow. Again, not saying that we're only concerned with those who don't have dads and those whose husbands have died, but this is an example of who were the most vulnerable in those ancient times where basically the man of the house was your lifeline. If you didn't have a husband, well, good luck providing for yourself because you can't own property as a woman. If your father is gone, well, then it goes to the next male and you better hope that there's, a male that can take care of the family. So when Isaiah, they're talking about this, seek justice and defend those who are vulnerable. Again, this is also talking to the religious community, us, people that are believers of God. We have to make sure that we're concerned about what's going on in other people's life and we're not just limited to our ritualistic lives as Christians. It's great that we come to churches. It's great that we have all the things that we do, our prayer lives and everything. But if it stops there, you're not worth much because you're not going out and addressing the rest of God's children that are in the world. Excuse me. Last, James 2:14 through 17. What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but has no good deeds? Can such faith save them? Suppose a brother or sister is without clothes and daily food. If one of you says to them, go in peace, keep warm and well fed, but does nothing about their physical needs, what good is it? In the same way, faith by itself is not accompanied, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. And again, that's to those of us, and I say us to be inclusive because us as Christians and everything, if we're not concerned about the real needs of our societies that we have been plopped in, if we're not concerned about the housing and the people who live in this neighborhood, then everything we do from 11 a.m. to 1:30 roughly is noise. And it's nothing but to make us feel better for a brief moment of time, and then we go back in our little bubbles and we don't heal anything. We don't address anything. We're not being productive. So again, with this point, really I just want to get across that, we're called to be responsible to other people, which means you have to be engaged. You can't take responsibility for somebody if you don't even know they're there and you don't know their needs. My next point is that we're called to be secular saints. Next slide. There we go. To be a true follower of God is to be double-sided, just like a coin. And when I say secular saints, what I mean is that we have two sides to us. We have the side that is like the godly side that you're in tune with. You're always trying to make it more like Jesus. But you also have the side that is a part of the world, the secular part that we live in. And so like a coin, you have to operate with both of those dimensions. When I look at different prophets in the Bible, Jesus, faith leaders, and just leaders in general out here, the ones that really spoke truth to power did so by operating with a double-sided nature. They weren't so holy that they were disengaged from the world and the systems that shaped the societies they were in. But they allowed the priestly and the godly side of them to decipher what was right and what was wrong in society according to God's standards of how people should be treated and lived in this world. So if you have a one-dimensional faith, that means that you're not really operating, you're not being true to the mandate God has given us and his people. And by one-dimensional, if you look at like a cross, we say it all the time, like, you know, you have your relationship with God and then you have your relationship with other people. If you don't have both operating, then something's missing. If all I am is concerned with my relationship with God and that's not translating to me caring about you, something's missing, because how can I love God who I've never seen and I'm not concerned that you're like hungry? Or if I'm just concerned about the world, I'm not even paying attention to God, how can I decipher what's really right and wrong? How can I decipher if we're really operating at the standards that God has called us? And as Christians, you know, we live in a world, but we know what's right, we know what's wrong, and we know the overall themes that God is looking for society. Now, you can get into your preferences and things you want to pick and choose in the overall Bible, but God is really clear about what he wants from people and how society should be shaped, and that's making sure that the vulnerable are taken care of and not taken advantage of. And so if you're operating one-dimensional, you can either commit sins by omission or by commission. You can do them intentionally or unintentionally by doing nothing. And I think that a lot of us can attest the damage that can be done by those who are bystanders, as well as those who actively inflict pain on others. So now that we've gone through all this Bible talk, how do we connect this with political involvement? Thanks for asking. So Romans 13:1 says, "Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God." So when I read this, I didn't get it. So I texted my dad and I was like, yo, what is this talking about? Because it doesn't make sense. And so it didn't make sense to me because it says, let everyone be subject to the governing authorities. All right, cool. For there is no authority except that which God has established. Okay. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Now that's problematic when you're looking at our government and you're like, there's no way that God has ordained Washington to be doing the craziness that it's doing. Like, I can't even justify, you know, these things. I mean, you look at Congress and they'll literally just say, no, I don't care that you need health care, die. God ordained that? No, I don't care. I'm a 75-year-old dude, but as a woman, I know more about your body. No. I don't care that your kids can't read at 10 because they don't have books and adequate teachers. No, I don't care about that. So I'm like, I don't understand that. So after rereading, talking to my dad and everything, it made sense to me that God ordains the idea of government, because God does everything decently and in order. If we don't have government, if we don't have structures that organize our society, you're going to be in chaos. Nothing works when things are in chaos. So it makes sense that God ordains the idea of government, which of course includes the protection of lives, rights, and well-being for the citizens that are under it. And therefore, because he has the idea of it, all governments everywhere are going to be held accountable by God in the end. People are going to have to be held accountable for their actions, whether we see it or not, in the treatment of its people overall. And God's standard is compassion and justice for everybody. So though, you know, I mean, it sucks because you see these things happening to people and you're like, this is not just, this is not fair. There's too much discrimination. You know, there's laws put in place that are really, you know, making disadvantages for certain people. And you have to remind yourself that in the end, everybody's going to be held accountable. Now, what you can do in the meantime is make sure that you're engaged, because if you're not paying attention, people will mess things up. Just because you don't want to be actively engaged does not mean that other people aren't making decisions that will impact our lives. And so being engaged in this political process, these are tools that we use as Christians to hold our governments accountable for and work towards establishing and maintaining societies that are matching the requirements God has for us as individuals and for societies at large. And so my last slide before I transition into the next speaker is, where is my voice? And so this is something that we're going to try and tackle, because I know as younger adults or whatever, it can get very frustrating looking at our systems, looking at the processes, and believe that what we want or what we say we want even matters. It kind of feels, I don't know, maybe I'm speaking about myself, but sometimes it feels like it falls on deaf ears, that you can have rallies with thousands of people, nothing changes. That you can have people sign petitions and get really involved in everything, and then it goes up to the state government, it's not on the ballot. And so part of the reason why we have to realize that your voice doesn't matter, you just have to understand how it matters. Because the problem with sin, it resides in both your heart, and that will translate into your social structures. We saw this with Jim Crow, slavery, the internment camps for the Japanese people, what they're doing, villainizing the Mexicans, really meaning everybody of Hispanic descent, which is stupid. But the sin that people have in their hearts individually, they use the power that they have in this world to translate that sin into the social structures which organize everybody. And so our voice as Christians is to use the secular tools that we have access to ensure that we continue to live by the standards God has for the society, which is justice and compassion, taking care of the vulnerable people. But you can't do that if you're asleep. You can't fix homelessness in Seattle and be concerned about the people you drive by on I-5 if you're concerned about other things and you don't turn a press conference on. You don't read an article in the newspaper to even know we're in a state of an emergency. You can't fix education if you didn't even know that the superintendent is trying to shut your kid's school down. Not pointing y'all out, but I'm just saying overall, you know what I mean? And so going into Sean's piece about where is my voice and what do you do, the first step you have to do is you have to pay attention. So now I'm going to transition to Sean.
Thank you, Karissa. Everybody stand up real quick. Yeah, sure, let's give her a hand. Remain standing if you understand that your role as a Christian is to be involved and engaged in our society and our political system. Okay, we got that, right? Remain standing if you feel like your voice matters or that you have a voice. Oh, we're done. All right then. Everybody have a seat. I just want to clarify, first off, the reason why I'm not surprised by that response is the people that get up for a conference all weekend and come in on a Saturday morning and pay to be here is because you care. You care. So me personally, I'm here to encourage you because I know many of you, actually I know some of you very well and the things that you're doing in the community with our kids outside of the church. So first and foremost. Next slide. Philosophy hat real quick. Stay with me. If a tree falls and no one's around, doesn't make a sound. Raise your hand if you believe yes. All right, put your hands down. Raise your hand if you believe no. All right, so now I'm not even going to say it. Then tell me some yeses. Who had a yes? That I want to hear yes. Answer. Oh. Why does it make a sound?
I don't know how to answer it. But, yeah, even if nobody hears it, it's still going to make a sound. Yeah, there you go.
All right. Come on, Jesse. Help her out, Jesse.
I think it makes a sound because it's been validated because if we cut a tree down, it makes a sound. So just because if an act of nature happens and the tree falls, it still will make a sound even if we're not there.
Where are my no's? There were some no's. Y'all don't want to talk now, huh? No? All right. I'm gonna go to these notes because I like how it was broken down when I researched it. If by sound we mean compressions in the air which result from the physical disturbances caused by the falling tree and which propagate through the air with audio frequencies, then we might not hesitate to answer in the affirmative. You're like, what does that mean? Basically what Jesse was saying, right? If you can close your eyes and think about a tree starting to fall, at the base, that means that it starts to crack. The trunk is cracking. Particles are beginning to fly, right? As it goes through the air, the wind is blowing the trees and the leaves is going to make another sound, right? As it hits the ground, there's going to be a thud. So from a physical perspective, like he said, we don't have to be there to know that the sound is going to be made. Now, as a human experience, the result of physical signals delivered by human sense organs, which are synthesized in the mind, I sound like Pastor Braxton, hold on, in the mind as a form of perception. So if we interpret the word sound to mean a human experience rather than a physical phenomenon, then when there is nobody around, there is a sense in which the falling tree makes no sound at all. What do you think about that before I jump in? Go ahead, let me bring you the mic.
What I've gathered before is sound is considered a perceived quality. So if I would have dropped this mic, whatever, I'm not, but if I would have dropped the mic, hits the ground, creates a bunch of vibrations. The vibration is perceived as sound. Now, if there's no person around, that vibration isn't perceived. So in that regard, you don't hear a sound. So when somebody asks that question, I always say it depends. Do you mean philosophically or do you mean scientifically?
That boy good. What was your name? Sean. Of course, Sean. That's how we roll. Yes. So right now, if a tree falls out here, we're not going to experience it. We can go out and see that it had fallen and can assume that there was a sound, right? So then let's break that down to, Sean, what are you talking about? Next slide, please. Reality check. When we see and experience injustice, evil, wrongdoing, right? When we see it, when we experience it, whether we're the victim or the witness, why do we remain silent? Be honest. Raise your hand if you've seen or experienced something that to your core you knew was wrong. It was either racist, sexist, ageist, just didn't rub you the right way. Raise your hand if you felt that or experienced it, witnessed it. Now keep your hand up if you've always addressed it in some kind of way. My hand went down too. Hands up. I know you make you. Hey, you don't play. Yeah, we already know. We're trying to be more like me, okay? It's not easy. It's not easy. I think this is an aside. The time that we're in now, because the pressure is bubbling so much in the country that it is becoming impossible not to have the conversation. But there was a time when as black people, if we stood up and said, hey, this doesn't feel right as a black person, you could get shunned. Sometimes by our own people. You're making that up. Don't pull the card. Don't do this. Don't. As a woman, same thing, right? But I don't know if that's the time that we're in now. This is not the time that we're in now, okay? I want some more about why we're silent. I want you guys to give me some, just so we can throw them up and try to deal with them. Yell them out. Fear. Fear of consequences. Comfort. What'd you say? Economic opportunity. Are you afraid of the economic opportunity you might lose? Or that the opportunity you may not gain? Either way, right? What else? Retaliation. What else? Confrontation. Knowledge. Lack of knowledge or the lack of knowledge from the person that's doing what they're doing? Either way. Misunderstood. That's a big one with a capital M. Misconception. Blacklist. Agree with it. Subconsciously, consciously, agree with it. And I'm going to say whitelist because Pastor don't like when we say blacklist. Right? So we're all aware of, as a Christian, I have an obligation. But when it's time to act, that first step is really, really hard. So we know that. How do we move forward? Next slide, please. I'm going to read it. Do not underestimate the impact of your voice. Your voice, your individual voice. I think because of us knowing, I know people in this room know our history somewhat or a lot to understand the magnitude of a Dr. King, a Malcolm X, a Sojourner Truth, an Obama, the impact. And I think sometimes we internalize that and think our impact has to be a Dr. King impact. It's probably not going to happen. And to be honest, I don't think Dr. King knew when he was freaking his first step that he was going to have the impact that he did. He just knew something didn't rub him the right way. And as a Christian, I've got to do something. Does that make sense? So we have to take the first step, and the rest will come. It's the first one that we have to make. I'm going to give you another visual. Have you ever thrown a rock in the ocean? You skipped it, right? What does it do? It sinks, but before it sinks, it might skip, which creates a ripple effect. Come on now, wake up, y'all. I know you're 8. Come on now, stay with me. One person throws a rock, has a ripple effect. What if everyone in this room lined up at a riverbank, we had a rock, and on the count of 3, we're making waves. Oh, yeah, hold on.
We're making waves.
As the young people say, wavy. Right? Now we laugh and it's simple, but how do we take the first step? Okay, Pastor Braxton, window of application, as my man would say. You're on the job. We all work in Washington, so I'm assuming you're in the minority at your workforce. Okay. Okay, so a coworker tells a story, tells a joke, makes a statement, makes a comment. Inappropriate, offensive. Raise your hand if you've been in that scenario. School, work. Okay, so we're all there. What do? I would say something. That's what I'm hearing. What else? Oh, hold on. Since you're being brave, I want to hear this answer. Thank you.
I don't ever say anything because, like, I'm so tiny and people just talk over me, and I can't stick up for myself. So I just keep quiet.
Don't feel like you have a voice. That's real.
You don't know. I think sometimes the problem is you don't know what to say. Like, these people, some of them may be your friends, and you sit there and try to figure out, like, I know they didn't have the intentions to offend me, but yeah, and you're trying to figure all that out, and you're like, forget it, I'm just going to go into another room.
So let's just deal with consequence, as Pastor shouted out. If you don't say anything, it can look like you agree. Silence is agreement. Now, we're family in here, so we're being vulnerable with the knowledge that we're going to inspire and give us application, okay? So I don't want people to, I thank you for sharing, because it's not just stature. I know plenty of 6-foot, broad-shouldered men of color that I have seen be disrespected and don't know what to do. As Pastor Braxton would say, they should play big, but they end up playing small. Man, I'm stealing all your stuff today. It's just coming out. Yeah. I'm giving you credit, where credit's due. But, okay, so for me, I'm 37 years old. I've been in multiple schools, and I've worked all over the country. And I have spoken, and I've been silent. I have grown up as a very confrontational person. So my immediate reactions has always been to step in and lean in. Whether I'm looking up or down, it don't matter to me. I was always leaning in. But what I've learned as I've become wiser is when someone is being ignorant, and not in the sense of just being a bad person, but literally they don't know. They don't know. And oftentimes evil starts with unawareness, knowledge. And you confront that, the immediate thing they do is be defensive. So I realized, as you mentioned, if this is somebody that I work with, I actually have a relationship with, I don't necessarily have to confront them because I've built relationship. And we talk about at Christian New Beginnings all the time, building relationship. So what I've done and what I'm trying to do more often is say, hey, John, I got time. I'm not busy right now. I just wonder if you want to get together for lunch. Maybe grab a coffee, man. Let's just catch up. Right? Okay, that sounds good, Sean. Let's do it. Hey, man, how's it going, man? It's going good. Yeah, everything's good. Yeah, okay, how's work? Oh, that's what's up. That's what's up, man. Well, I appreciate what you do. And, I think you're an asset to the company, and I've learned or I've seen you, I've witnessed you. But I got to be honest, something you said kind of really stopped me in my tracks, because I'm like, I know this guy. John, I know you. Like, this is not something that I think really reflects on who you are as a person and your character. Now, some people, let me stop and say, like, I ain't doing all that. Let's just be honest. I ain't doing all that. And you don't have to. This is just one example of an approach, because I think what we have to start doing is talking about solutions. So once you do all that, they're going to say, well, what are you talking about? Well, you said this. What did you mean when you said that? Give them a chance. Give them a chance. You know, I meant X, but when I said it and I went home, I was like, ooh, I shouldn't. You never know. Misunderstood. And the reason why I paused when you said that is because sometimes people say stuff because it's, if you play basketball and as a kid you were trained to do certain moves, make certain maneuvers, make certain decisions, and you practice that over and over and over again, when you're in a game, it's instinct. So if my parents and my grandparents have been racist and they make comments or innuendos or tell stories of certain attitudes and perceptions, whether you consciously say, I believe or agree, that's your environment. So now if you say it based off of instinct, you may not even know because it was just second nature, right? So the opportunity says, what do you mean? Now, what you mean? I meant what I said. Okay. Let me share how that can be taken in the wrong way of the context. And I always do this. As a black man, and then a lot of times they put their shoulders down. And, I mean, let's be honest. They think we're aggressive, so sometimes I use it, right? Sometimes we have to turn what they've made ugly and dark and evil into what we know is beautiful and bold and proud and knowledgeable. Now, I got to know my knowledge to be able to confront them. I can't just say, well, because, man, I'm black, and you don't need to. No. No, here's the history. And so what you said, without even going too much into the historical context, is as a company, we want all of our employees to be at their best so that we can be profitable, right? John's going to say, of course. Okay, so John, if now you said something in that entire day or that week, all I can think about is what you said. In a meeting, I'm not focused. I'm not taking notes. I'm wondering, who are you? Do you represent me? Do you treat me or see me as a person? Because now you've somewhat validated how you view people that look like me. So now you just put that on the table and say, John, man, I appreciate your time. You may have some more dialogue, but at the end of it, it's just, hey, man, I just wanted to share because I just wanted to know, where you were and where you stood. That's one approach. Now, if you're not comfortable with that, and I'll be honest, sometimes I'm not, because sometimes I feel like if I have it, it's going to get physical. I'm not even going to go in that space. So I might go to HR. That's what HR is there for. If they're doing their job, they're there, high school, college, and work. Now, I'll be honest. 5 years ago, maybe from 21 to 30, cut me off on time, too, because I would call my mom every time. Mom, do you know what they just did? Yo, you're not going to believe. Baby, I know, and you're mad. But guess what? They're intimidated by you. You are a brilliant, young, black man. They don't know what to do with that. So just get your mind wrapped around it. That's where they're coming from. Now, here's what I want you to do. And she'd always give me something. So what I'm saying is you have to have somebody that you can call upon in those difficult times that's not going to reinforce or blow up the energy bigger than it already is, but that is going to sympathize and empathize, say, I understand, but now here's what you do, baby. It can be a peer, you can call me, or it could be somebody, or you know what I mean, like somebody that's going to hug you, but then push you out. Because see, too many times we just hug. Then we feel better, then the next day we back at it, and it's not going to change, right? So the other thing is, so go to HR, say, here's what happened. You can choose to say the name or not. Here's what happened, here's what was said, and just as a person of color, or if it's not even your fight. Hey, man, what's your name? Ro. I witnessed Ro in a situation, and I know she was offended. I don't even know her whole history. But it's not right, and see, that's what I do. I don't think this is the type of company we want to be. We got to be smart. We got to be articulate, and that's what we are. Everybody's educated. Say your prayer. God, give me, before I go in here, let me not, okay, I'm ready. Practice your speech in the mirror the night before. Public speaking, 101. That's easy. Sir, okay, let me start again. Editing. We're talking about editing your priorities, but also edit how you speak, particularly when it matters. Because what you say in these moments not only define you or the company, but it defines a human experience that then can either be built upon or break us down. Let me get back over here because I'm way off my notes. The The other thing you can do is go to HR and just say, Ro, you might be able to do this. I think this might work for you. I'm curious, what are the policies around diversity and dealing with racism, sexism, and biased and perception and those type of things? I just don't know. What are the company policies? This is your HR rep. Well, we don't have any. Or we have them and here's what they are. But you know, Ro, they're really tough to implement. Whatever they say, now the conversation can happen. Now, I advise you in that situation, and I did this just now just to see if it was realistic. The other day I did this, and I said, okay, well, here are some articles about what's going on. Here's some information that I read about some other companies that have diversity training or conversation, right? So now you're dealing with it, but you don't have to confront it. So I've given you 3 options. That's just one scenario. That's just one scenario. So you understand what I'm saying? We got to start brainstorming ways to have a conversation, and it's no longer just with us. It's no longer just with us. This was the first time I sent and I'm going to close with this. I sent an all email to my company. My company, I'm the only black person. There's 3 people of color, 60 of us, ish. And I said, without giving all of it, but I said, I know I'm not in the office a lot, so I just need to share where I'm at. And I'm really struggling with the realities of blacks in America right now. What's going on? And I said, some of you know I'm an activist, and I named some things that I do just to qualify, There's some of the things that I do. But I'm feeling a little disheartened. I'm feeling a little like my efforts are futile, And I just need you guys to be aware of the black community, the Muslim community, the LGBTQ, I forgot to remember the Q, community. And I said, if you're involved and you're engaged, I encourage you to persist and continue. I said, if you're not, I ask that you look at how you can get engaged. Thank you. That's how I close my emails. And for 5 minutes, and then the email started to come in. Not group all, individual. But that's okay, because that's the reality of a lot of white people. They now are aware. A lot of them are really aware, and they don't know what to do. So now, if every one of you engaged one white person, your friend, a coworker, and just said, how do you feel about what's going on? Because here's where I'm at. A lot of times you may hear, it's driving me crazy, it's breaking my heart, but as a white woman, I don't know what to do. As a white man, I don't know what to do. Sean, tell me what to do. Now the door's open. And by Monday, I'm going to have my list. Here are some things that you can do. And we're not going to beat them over the head. It's be aware. Here's some sites you can go to get knowledge. Here's some books you can read to learn about the culture, because the more you learn about me, the more you'll understand me, and the less misunderstanding there will be. I'm going to just stop right there.
Good afternoon, good people. All right, I'm Ebony White, for those of you who don't know me. Married into the white. Catch it. Anyway, civic engagement is not passive, it's quite calculated. I would like for you to take 15 seconds and think of some ways that you could be involved in your community nationally, locally, think of something, statewide. Okay, anybody have anything? Any ways you can be engaged?
So I recently moved here from Atlanta, and one of the challenges for me is when I lived in Atlanta, I was a part of Lead in Leadership Atlanta, and it's where they pulled 20-year-olds out of different corporate companies, and they asked us to be civic leaders in the city. So I had the opportunity to work with Mayor Reed on how we would address homelessness in Atlanta, build a business plan on how we would address those issues. And we pulled about 74 students or 74 people in my cohort, and we worked on issues like this. Moving to Washington, there's nothing like that. So it's really, how do you bring leaders from various companies, various backgrounds, various groups, and form consortiums where we can talk about the issues and how we can solve these challenges, because these are challenges that we're all facing, and we're brilliant minds, so why not bring the brilliant minds together?
To that, I would say, you have a Facebook? I'm gonna need you to get back on your social media. So if you right now, because of everything that's happening, there's so many groups that are getting together. If you go on your events in Facebook, you'll see Wonder of Women. They're having an event, I believe, on Sunday. Yeah, tomorrow night. There's a few events that are happening today, but thankfully you're here. But if you go on Facebook, there's a lot of events that are out there that you can go to, that a lot of groups are getting together as one. Is there one more?
So I'm from Seattle, born and raised. I've left and come back, went to college. I know a lot of people, but I've never been the one to be the face or be directly involved into efforts. But recently I've become a part of Build Seattle. We just rebranded, we just rebranded a Rebuild Seattle, which we just established on Friday. And it started from a Facebook post, and it was like, if you're concerned about the issues in the world, meet us here. Not a huge structure, but we're meeting again tomorrow night at Sewer Park at 6 o'clock. 65 people have committed, and what I was coming to say is that we all have the power. And in the last class, I was speaking to this power that we have, and whether or not we've discovered it or not. But our conversations at home that start off with our parents or our kids or whoever it is that we're in touch with the most, I think that's where we can utilize our power and start it there, like I am with you guys now, and tomorrow and every other day. But it's something that we can do on our own and not on a large scale. You know, if we all took the time to give one person, 30 minutes of our feelings or what's happening in the world, they're gonna go and take that to someone else. And so we are very powerful as an individual. So I know that, civic engagement is important, but we should also recognize our individual power.
Right. Okay, so the thing is, it's very important for us as a people, and I'm glad that one of the answers was not just register to vote, although all of you are registered to vote, yes? Anybody not registered to vote? Okay. So there's a lot of things you can do outside of the political realm that are political, starting in your individual communities, just getting involved locally. We just moved, technically yesterday, back into an area that we were in, and on our doorstep was this lovely little pamphlet here. It's the East Side Neighborhood Advisory Council of Tacoma, ENACT. And so they have their community partnership and what we can do in our community. I'm sure your local community has some sort of group that you can tap into within your neighborhood. But you on your own can look at, if you have children, right? Engage in your PTA, because many a times, at least in my experience, especially with my daughter, it's basically just me, that nice little speck of pepper and a whole bunch of salt. And so there are certain things that could and have and needed to be checked in her school, because people aren't aware of things that can be hurting to our communities, right? I'll give you an example. They had my child's school goes from K to 12, Christian school. But they had a presentation they were doing that the high schoolers, which include African Americans, put together. And one of the slides that flashed was Portland, Oregon, white utopia. No, it was serious. Nobody knew that was offensive. Nobody knew. It's real, it's the reality. Oregon was built to be white utopia. However, I don't see how that was fun, enlightening. They just liked the slide. It was just a cute picture to them. It was scenic, right? Nobody knew or cared to research the implications. So if we're not there to let people know that this is wrong or this is how this can be perceived, nothing's really going to change. So you need to put your body in the position to affect change. Now, in the political realm, next slide. In the political realm, there are two major parties, right? Republicans, Democrats. I didn't really want to assume that everyone here would be a Democrat or not Republican, so I added the Republican stuff. So if you are, okay, you can go to the website, wrsp.org, get involved. Basically, for the Republicans, you can volunteer in their office in Bellevue, or you can give them money, or you can call to be text for alerts. That's pretty much the three options you have based upon their website. For the Democrats, what you can do, again, go to the website. You can take those phones that I asked you to put away. You can take them out, snap a photo so you can have the websites with you. There you can get more information about your local community, your local district. You can get involved, become a PCO, a precinct committee officer. This is a person that would go through the community, talk about the initiatives that are coming up on the ballot, talk about what's happening in your neighborhood, things of that nature. But you really get in touch with your people in your community, door to door, or a phone call. Simple as that. Not anything major, and you get to know the people around you, right? So these are the people, if something goes down, that you would want to help you. So I encourage you to become a PCO if that's something that you're interested in. It's an election year. Unfortunately, you can't do this now, but in 4 more years, if you are a Democrat and if we are still going through the caucus system, you can attempt to be a delegate. I got to be a delegate this year. I would say take snacks if that's what you are trying to do. Take snacks with you. It is a long process. You get to learn about things that you didn't realize were happening in your community. The process is, it's a lot of old people, right? It's a lot of old people, and they come prepared to stay the course. And that's how they become the delegates and make these decisions for us. There's not a lot of us there, because I was there until 2 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. Had to go to work next day. But what wasn't going to happen is somebody other than me becoming a delegate if I could help it, right? Because I want to affect change in my community, locally, in the city, in my county, in this state, nationally. So you could do that. Next slide. So tools that you can use, you can go look at voter guides, the Secretary of State's website. You can look at people, so the governor, lieutenant governor, it'll tell you about their platforms, etc. You can look at initiatives that are coming up on the ballot. Everybody should have their pamphlets, their voting cards they're starting to get mailed out on the 15th. You should get them by the 15th. You can go to your local meetings. The Democrats meet monthly. I couldn't tell you about Republicans, but the Democrats meet monthly. You can go to your local district's website to find out where they're meeting at. City council meetings, community forums, any block club meetings, which is basically what this was, all that kind of stuff. Next slide. So political involvement is community engagement. It's simply getting out there and being the change that you want to see, right? So letting your voice be heard. As Karissa said, we have an obligation to stay woke, right? Don't let anybody dim your voice. Don't let anybody dim your light. Stay woke, read up, research what's going on. Be engaged. Next slide. I'm not trying to take up everybody's time and we're over. So,
I know we're engaged or we're over time, but we'll just briefly, if anybody, and we'll bring Brother Andre up real quick. If you guys haven't signed his petition, it's the one involving removing that malice clause from the police brutality, which everybody in here, in light of recent episodes this week, should have your name on that petition. But briefly, we'll just chat about, you know, anything that struck you, any questions or anything that you want to talk about in regards to being politically active and being engaged. I know, like, a lot as younger people, we have a lot of criticisms of our current processes, right? We don't necessarily trust the government. We don't really understand it. We want things to change. We're looking for leadership about how to get those things done. But one thing that we really want to leave you guys with, that we should all keep with us, is that if we're going to really change the course of this country, if we're going to change the processes by which things are made, if we're going to change you know, how we restructure everything, we can't get caught up with people's personal feelings about us, about other people. You can't change what's in somebody's heart, but what you can do is change a policy that they'll try and use to discriminate you. I can't change if you don't like black people, but I can make sure that the company's policies can't actively discriminate against your hiring. I can't change if you don't like gay people. That's between you and whatever higher power that you're aligned with. But I can make sure that you can't go out and bash people. You can't go to, you know, rallies, and you can't go towards other communities and harass them. I can't change, you know, other things that are in your heart and everything, but I can make sure that there are policies and laws in place where if I get shot, that cop is not going to get paid, leave, and go about his merry way to Hawaii while my family has to figure out how to bury me, and another one gets added, and another one gets added, because there are these laws that we don't even know about that have these clauses where even if he is on camera and we can clearly see he got shot in his head, you can't prosecute him because we weren't paying attention to what's on the books. And so I don't know if anybody has anything that they want to say or anything like that. I'll open up the floor for anybody to say anything. Don't look at me like you don't, because we have all been talking nonstop for 5 days on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and between each other. So yeah, before I dismiss everybody, I'm gonna briefly open up the floor.
I tend to have a lot to say sometimes when it comes to group interactions, but I'll direct this question somewhat to Brother Andre, but the only thing that I've really been seeing this week has been distasteful. And I've noticed the differences in minority media and non-minority media. And so at this point in time in 2016, where people were actually shooting cops, I'm starting to question if this motive, or, you know, what this movement, thank you, this movement that we are trying to upstart, are we really gonna like have to be prepared to die? Like, I think that it's coming down to us having to die, like as they did during the civil rights movement. And I have a 6-year-old son. And as committed as I wanna be to these movements, to these changes, especially for his growth, will I really need to be at the front line of this? Like, willing to, I honestly feel like it's coming down to death. I honestly do. I don't know if it's gonna be being pulled over, taken out one by one, as it has been, or if it's gonna be the fact where we really are tired and together and then continue to get picked off. I'm trying to understand the mentality that I have to have for this movement to be successful.
Yes. Thank you for that. When you come into Christianity, you have to be prepared to die first. That's the commission. You come, you lose your life. If you try to find your life, you lose it. If you find your life. If you find your life, you lose it. If you lose your life, you find it. The premise of Christianity is dying, daily death. And I think because in this particular country, we have the convenience of freedom, but there are the Christians everywhere over the country that are living what you are talking about right now. And sometimes when we speak in America, we're not speaking broad enough because we're only speaking out of our conditions here, our safeties here. We eat food every day and the like. And so I think that in light of what is required in the Christian walk or the Christian faith, I think that it is natural for us to believe that anything that we believe in is worthy enough for death. I think that when Paul said that he was pressed beyond measure when he went to Asia, and they had beyond the ability to even communicate the stress, he said, but we had the sentence of death within ourselves, that we would trust God and not man. That's normality as believers. It's supposed to be. And if we haven't been there, maybe that's one of the reasons why we might have lost a generation of our people that are willing to die right now. So if I can give you just a brief background, because I've heard some great things and great things being said about who are we and what God could, and basically what God can use. Well, little background, probably many of you don't know because I look quite different than what I did 20 years ago when I was in the street with a checkered past. Just to let you know that God could use anybody. I think I was considered probably maybe one of the worst, the chief sinner, if you would. When I was on TBN several times, I always tell this story because we overcame by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of our testimony. And I make sure to, through my life and the things that God had brought me through, to share that and be transparent about that. That's important. It's better that you tell your story than your enemy. So I was in a movie that the Hughes brothers did. They came to me and we did a movie called American Pimp. I starred in that movie, American Pimp. I went to federal prison. I used to be known as Gorgeous Dre. Lots of people saw this film. And I share that because in that lifestyle, I had accomplished a great amount of things, the height, biggest guy in it at the time. And sometimes God has a fascinating way of taking instances like this, circumstances like this, just to show that, listen, I could take this guy here, who's considered the scum of the earth in popular America, and I could take his life and I can turn it around. I've been married for 18 years. My son graduated from Yale last year. My daughter goes to UCLA. Son's a model. 2 of my daughters are married. There's life after the streets because God is able. And so when my brother Shay Taylor was killed February 21st, I moved from Los Angeles back home. I hadn't been home for many years. But I had already had a platform of doing things. I spoke many places already. I was lecturing at universities, talking at prisons. So I had a national platform already. So it was easy for me then to come here and take that national platform and press for my brother here. The genius of the Holy Spirit is just amazing, that this guy who was dealing with the system of breaking laws is now making laws. That's the genius of the Holy Spirit. So really no one has an excuse, because if he could use me and my horrible self, he could use anybody. That's just a testament of his greatness. No one is exempt from the power of the Holy Ghost to be able to do what he wants to do. And we're happy. My sister and I have been working extremely hard, and she has her own story, and she can tell it better than me. You know, we come out the streets, you know. But when you face this enemy, I'm not talking about white people, I'm talking about the system. The system, when you face this enemy, I always teach that you can't be reactive, because we are a very emotional people. We react, right? Because when you're facing the system, telling you how we got to this point, I always taught that you have to be responsive, because ultimately it is a narrative fight. They want to control the narrative. That's why they tell us that this person was a criminal or he had a bad background, and you know what they do, because they want to control the narrative. And if we are reactive, you know, angry, we have a right to be. But that's not our reality. We can't be. We got to keep thinking. Then the narrative goes to us being angry and criminality and acts of us expressing ourselves through some of those things. And so the justice is missed, because now all the media and everything goes to our reaction. We have to respond. We have to respond with our own narrative to fight the narrative. That's what we were able to do. And for months, we've been able to push this agenda of I-873 for justice for all of our people and all people, because they could kill white folks in half. 2005 to 2015, 213 people have been killed by police in Washington, and not one officer convicted of a crime because of this clause in the law. So I wanted to present to our people a new way, a better way, a sure way of fighting. Because I've said this often, you punch, it's like a boxer, and he just gets his strongest punch, and he swings and he misses. Boxers say when you miss, you've exerted more energy than if you would have hit your target. So our marching has been a miss because nothing has changed. Our rallying has been a miss because nothing has changed. And my people, us, we are frustrated. We are done. What do? Well, in come a new way of thinking. Let's attack the laws because we've been uninformed. It is my job to try to inform us so that we can fight a new way, a sure way. And that way we have to use our brilliance and our genius to do so, represented in this room, to get the job done. And we will, and we have been. We, day before yesterday, the mayor and the Seattle Police Department endorsed the initiative. That's big stuff. That's big stuff. But that's because we're using the brilliance. We are the first peoples, the purveyors of knowledge of the world. We are not just emotional people, but they would like to keep us there to make us think that that's who we are. We gave you science and mathematics. That's who we are. It's now time for us to show that. And I guarantee you, when we act in that manner, we're going to get the job done. So help me, help us get the message out. If you would like to take some initiatives today and information on the initiatives, we have them out there for you. Share with your family members, your friends, educate them, talk to them. We have to educate our people about how we're winning and how we're going to get this law passed. 250,000 signatures we need before the end of the year. We started maybe 2.5 weeks ago. We have 30,000. We can get it done. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Because we're over, we're going to just go ahead and close. You know, in closing in this workshop, I really hope we got the point to you. We're really trying to communicate that, you guys, we have to stick together and we have to get engaged and we have to understand what we're fighting. You can't fix something if you don't know what it is. And you can't fix something if you're not paying attention. And so as we all go forward and we continue to have these conversations relating to politics and policies and everything else, I really encourage you guys to understand that as a Christian, it is your obligation. And as a community, we are obligated to each other. You know, if you're not engaged and you're not paying attention, you're hurting me and you're hurting yourself. And so that's the spirit that I want to leave you guys with as we close out this section of Shift. You guys are now on break. Please be back by 5. Yes, Auntie Janice? Oh, yeah, I'm not done. Please be back here by 5:30. The actual 5:30, not Black people 6 o'clock. Please be here on time. For the encounter experience. If you have not been here, I encourage you to come back. It is something I cannot tell you what you're going to experience because, well, yeah, probably that. I can't tell you what you're going to experience because it's something that you can't put into words. And even for those of us who went last year, I encourage you to come back because you don't know what's going to happen this year. Secondly, in the back, they're going to have surveys that we want you guys to fill out so that we can keep making Shift better and better and everything like that. And I think that's all I was supposed to say, right? If I missed something, you'll figure it out later. So I'll see you guys at 5:30. You are dismissed. And don't forget to grab a survey, fill it out, and return it to us. Thank you.